welcome to the Rundown with Dr. Ciarrah. Today we are talking about how to run longer distances. So if you watched my previous video, you saw that I recently ran a 5K, which was great and awesome. And then, immediately after, I started having people asking me like, oh, like, when's your next race? When are you doing a 10K? And I was just a little bit confused because I never said that I wanted to run a 10K. I have run a 10K before, but it just was not necessarily on my agenda for this year to be running a 10K. But because I kept getting that question multiple times, I'm like, all right, let's do a video on how to run longer distances. And then maybe, I don't know, I may be peer pressured into running another race. Again, not on my agenda, but I enjoy running, so it's not something that I dread. It's just something that you definitely have to prepare for. So if you have recently run, or if you've just only run 5Ks and you're trying to figure out how do I take that next step into running longer distances, whether it be a 10K, or if you're trying to get ready for a half, or if your ultimate goal is to run a marathon, I'm just going to give you some tips today on how you can do that. And the first tip is you have to warm up. I don't know how much I can stress this point. It is essential that when you are getting ready for your runs that you absolutely must stretch. I always recommend that you do some form of dynamic stretching because it gets your muscles warmed up and prepared for your race. You don't want to just start running cold turkey while you're going for your race. You don't want to start having cramps because your body didn't get that opportunity to kind of adjust. So you need to make sure that you are doing dynamic stretching before you start your race, and then static stretching once you complete your race. Whether it's just like you're going out, you're practicing, you're just taking a light run, I still think it's important to add those stretches in because you don't want your muscles to get damaged along the way. You don't want to create any new injuries. You just want to make sure that your body is warmed up the best way possible. Now, the next tip that I want to give is that you absolutely need to start slow. Now, if you have only consistently run 1 mile and then you're like, oh, well, I want to run 6 miles, I just would recommend not thinking that you can just run 1 mile one day and run 6 miles the next day if you've never done it. You want to kind of ramp your body up. Start with like a program where maybe you run 1 mile consistently for 1 week. Then if you go up to 1.5 miles, you just want to create some type of routine regimen where you can kind of build your way up instead of trying to do it all at one time. You have to create that type of routine for your body so your body knows what's going on. And if you try to stress your body too much, that is where injuries occur. And here we're all about injury prevention. So you just have to try your best to make sure your body is prepared. Don't try to overload your body too quickly. You want to make sure you're doing things in a healthy way, at the most healthiest way as possible, so that you don't have any injuries and that you can continue running and you can keep doing what you enjoy. And the other thing I want to say about that is just make sure that you don't try to ramp up too fast. You may feel like, oh, well, I know I can run 3 miles. That's fine. Again, you may feel some discomfort in your body. You may experience DOMS just if it's something that you haven't been doing, but you just want to make sure that you're doing it in a safe way. You want to take your time doing it. Don't try to rush yourself. I just don't want anybody to get hurt because you feel like, oh, I can do it. I don't need to take my time. Just listen to your body, take your time, and then you'll be okay. Now, one thing I have noticed recently, even I experienced during my 5K, is that I was having a side stitch. Now, if you are a runner and you run pretty consistently, I'm sure it's something that you have experienced at some point along the way. So how do we prevent these side stitches while we're running these longer distances? Well, first things first, I've talked about this in some of my previous videos, is that you want to, one, kind of slow down your pace that you're going just for a little bit. I'm not saying stop your run, but you just want to slow down your pace a little bit, get your breathing together, try to, slow it down so that it's a little bit slower than your normal while you are running speed or pace. And then another thing that you can possibly do to help is to kind of apply some pressure to that area. See if you just like pushing on it a little bit will help to decrease that side stitch. It's like one of the worst things that can happen while you're running because it's like so uncomfortable. It messes with your breathing and you don't want to stop your whole entire run because of of it. So if you can do anything to prevent it, I would say just slow it down, try to apply some pressure, just keep trying to work through it, get some deep breaths in, and then just try to keep on with your run. Another thing, this is not for running a longer distance, but while I was thinking about it, make sure that you tie your shoes multiple times before your race so you don't have to stop. That was just something I was thinking about when I'm thinking of like reasons to stop running. Make sure your shoes tied and make sure that you don't have to stop because of that. That is like super annoying to me if I'm running and then I have to stop. It kind of just throws me off, so I like to continue. So I'm just throwing that little side note in there. Now the next thing, if you are running and you have not run this distance that you're trying to reach, I would just suggest to do like a combination. So you can run some, you can walk some, and if your goal is to get you to running that entire distance, that's fine. Now what I would say is, say you've consistently been running 3 miles, and if you get to, let's say, 3 or 4 miles and you're like, okay, I really tried to get to those 6 miles, I just wasn't able to do it today. I would suggest, even if you only were able to run for 4 of those miles, go ahead and walk those last 2 miles so that you still can get to that 6 miles. So your body is used to run 6 miles. And at some point, eventually you'll be able to get that 6 miles completely running. And even if the next time it's only that you got to 5, still just walk that extra mile so that that whole time frame your body is used to running 6 miles. And then after you consistently done that for some time and you got those 6 miles in, then you can kind of start focusing on the time. If that is your goal, like I want to run my 6 miles in less than an hour or whatever your goal is. You know, you just need to get your body conditioned so that your body's like, okay, so I know that we're doing 6 miles. This is about how long we've been exercising for. So whether I'm walking it or whether I'm running it, my body is used to running that 6 miles. Now, if along the way you feel like, especially if you're walking, if this is a point where you have to walk and you just kind of feel like, oh, maybe I'm getting a cramp in my leg, maybe I just need to stop for a second and catch my breath, then do that. I always say allow, some grace. You don't have to beat yourself up if you have to stop. You'll get it the next time. But if you feel like you're getting a cramp in your leg, or if something is going on where you need to stop and stretch, then stop and stretch. It's better to do that along the way while you're on your run, opposed to you didn't stop, you got a cramp in your leg, you felt like you could just keep going, and then something happens. Maybe you get a strain in a muscle because you didn't pay attention to it. I always say, don't ignore the small things. Let's address it while we can. Let's address it in the beginning phases so that it doesn't turn out to be something bigger than what it could have been, So you just want to make sure that you're listening to your body. And if you need to, then definitely stop and stretch. I think it's important. If you didn't stretch maybe as long as you needed to before your run started and you're like, oh, I kind of feel something, pay attention to that. Now, if your race day, I hope that your body is conditioned and you won't have to have that problem. But if you're just going out for a regular jog and run, I definitely would encourage you to stop, pay attention to whatever it is that you're feeling, and then just jump right back into it. It won't be that big of a deal. You have to condition your body. You have to get used to these things, and you have to listen to the warning signs. So if your body is telling you, hey, well, I'm kind of feeling something, then stop and pay attention. Now, while you're on your run, I think it's important to note that you definitely need to pace yourself, right? So if you're saying I'm about to go run 6 miles or 13 miles, that's not a short distance. So you don't want to burn yourself out too quick. So you don't want to start with a speed that you may not be able to maintain. I think personally it's better to kind of start off slower. And if you're able to run at that speed for a certain distance, that's fine. Let's say you've been running that same speed for about 5 or 6 miles, and then you feel like you're in your groove now, so you're able to increase your speed a little bit. That's fine. If you're able to maintain that speed for a couple of miles or so, then go ahead. I just feel like if you start off too fast, you may burn yourself out and you may not be able to maintain that speed, which you may end up walking. I feel like it's better to speed up if you are able to run that same distance for a certain amount of time and you don't have any issues. And I think it's definitely good if you're towards the end and you still have that little bit extra energy and you can kind of sprint toward the finish line. I think that's great. But again, if you burn yourself out in the beginning, you're not going to be able to increase your speed throughout your run or even at the end of the race to finish strong. So I just want to make sure that you're not burning out at the beginning too quickly. So just find a good speed for you that you can maintain for whatever distance that you're trying to run, and just make sure that you're pacing yourself. Now here's one that I say all of the time. You have to add strength training into your routine. Now, if you want to run a longer distance, and if you want to run faster, those are my recommendations. That if you do strength training, you will see an improvement in your speed, you will see an improvement in your strength, and you will see an improvement in how long you're able to run. Why? Your muscles are stronger. You've been strength training. You've been putting in the work and targeting those specific muscles, particularly your quads, your hamstrings, all your lower leg muscles. You want to make sure that they are strong. That's including some flexibility to make sure that things are not too tight. That's where the stretching comes in. But that strength training is so important, because if you think about it, when you're running, your lower body is taking so much force when you're running. It's taking kind of like a beating. And if your body isn't able to absorb the shocks that you're putting in while you're running, then you kind of fall apart. But if you have a good, strong foundation, then it makes it easier for your runs. It makes it a little bit easier. I'm not saying that if you're like the buffest person, then you won't have any difficulty running. No, I'm not saying that. But your muscles are strong. Your muscles are conditioned, so you are less likely to have injury when you're making all these long runs, especially if you're running on concrete. That's taking your lower body is taking a beating. So if you're able to strengthen those muscles, then that's where less injury comes in, and that's where you're able to run faster. You're able to run injury free. Like, that is our goal, to continue to run and not have to worry about any injuries. And so that's where that strength training comes in. You have to incorporate that into your routine. And it's like, some people, they're like, I just want to run, I don't want to worry about that. Yeah, but you also don't want to have injury. So if you want to avoid injury, I am begging everyone who watches this channel to incorporate that into your routine. It is very, very important. Now, next, I think it's important too that if you know someone who you are maybe going to run a race with, and you kind of train together, it will help you. Even if the person is a little bit stronger than you, even if the person can run further than you, if you're running with somebody, it's an awesome way to kind of help push yourself. If you are only used to running 3 or 4 miles, but the person's, y'all are trying to get to running those 6 miles, if you have somebody to push you along the way, it is definitely easier versus when you're out there, you're by yourself and you're like, man, I'm tired. I don't want to keep running these 6 miles. It's easier to just stop because no one is there to hold you accountable. If you have that person, even if they're ahead of you, it's like, hey, come on, like, let's keep up the pace. Let's keep pushing. Like, it's just better when you have somebody who can run with you. I personally enjoy running with other people. It definitely pushes me because, for one, no one wants to get left behind, right? So if the people are running before you or in front of you, you're like, I got to keep up. Like, I don't want to be, even if you're the last person, it's just like, you don't want to be left behind. I don't know. Like, I just like to, as best as I possibly can, try to stay close to whoever it is that I'm running with. And especially if you're the person who's in front, I promise it will motivate you to not stop, because the person behind you, like, you're motivating them. They're like, I don't want to get left behind. So they're trying to catch up to you. So you're kind of pushing each other, even if you don't think about it. But like, if you're in front, you're encouraging that other person, like, let me just catch up. Let me not stop. I don't want to get too far behind. And if you're that person behind, you're like, hey, I want to make sure that I don't get too far behind. So it kind of works hand in hand. And I think it's awesome that if you have a partner to run with, it will definitely help motivate you to run that longer distance that you may not be used to. So our next point is, first of all, you have to get your head together, right? Because it is a mental battle when you are running. I don't care what anybody says. You have to talk to yourself. You have to encourage yourself to keep saying, keep going, keep going. I can do it. I can do it. You have to find a reason that will definitely motivate you to keep pushing to get to the end of your race. You have to find something deep within that you can just dig deep so that you can make it to the end. And again, I feel like this comes over time. So like, let's say that you're used to running those 3 to 4 miles and you're just like, okay, but I really want to get to running 5 miles. So it has to be something in you that you just can keep pushing yourself a little more each time. Even if it's just you run 4.25 one day, then you run 4.5, then you run 4.75. Something has to be within you that you keep motivating yourself and keep pushing yourself to get a little bit further and further each time. It really is a mental battle, because when you're running, if you're just like, I don't want to do this, if you have a negative attitude toward it, if you're like, I really don't feel like running today, then guess what? You just probably won't have the greatest run. But if you're like, I can do this, I can run this 5 miles, and you do it, it's because you've spoke positive things to yourself. You just had a good, a good mindset when you are getting ready to run. So those things definitely play a role. So I would just encourage everyone to definitely figure out your reason why. Why do you want to run 5 miles so bad? Whatever it is, if you just want to prove to yourself, I can do this. During the race, I said before that I saw people from all ages, young and old and older population. And I just felt like, this is awesome that whatever, 60, 70, 80, whatever it is, they're still able to run. They're proving to themselves that no matter what my age is, I can still do it. So figure out your why, get out there and run whatever goal you are trying to make. I highly encourage it. And I know that you can do it. It just takes time. You have to have a plan. You have to set yourself up to be able to achieve that goal. Don't oversell yourself like, oh yeah, I can get out there and do anything. Well, let me work my way up. Let me have my plan. Let me be consistent about my running. And of course, you can absolutely do it. But just again, I said earlier, you have to set those realistic expectations before you could just say that you're going to do something that you haven't done in a very long time. Now, my last and final point is I would encourage everybody to change your route. I would highly encourage you to not necessarily run the same place every single time, to kind of mix things up. Now, in the beginning, let's say you're trying to get those 5 miles in and you know exactly where each mile marker is. I think that is helpful for me, but I definitely feel like sometimes when you can just run in a different environment, you can run in a different place, it kind of just is better because you kind of get to see different things and it's new. So you can just kind of look around while you're running and you don't have to necessarily focus so much on, okay, is this mile 1? Is this mile 2? You're just kind of running because you're just trying to see everything. Now, make sure it's in a safe space, obviously, and make sure that, you're not just wandering off because you don't necessarily know where you're going. I don't want anybody to get lost, but I definitely just want you to change up your scene so that it can encourage you to just run a little bit longer, because sometimes people get bored with running the same thing. So if you mix things up, it's a little bit better. And just like the same thing with the treadmill. I know, because I'm not really a great treadmill runner, but the treadmill can become so boring because you're just running the same place. You're not really moving anywhere unless you have one of those fancy treadmills that have different scenes and you can, just switch it up a little bit. It just becomes boring and you get tired of it and you're like, I just don't want to even do this anymore. But if you can switch things up, it kind of adds a little bit of extra fun in there. You can kind of, like I said, look at different things. So you have a lot more options when you change your route or when you just do different things to make your run a little bit better. So those are all the tips that I have for you today. I hope that you enjoyed today's video. I hope that if you are trying to make that transition from running maybe a 5K to a 10K, that you will use some of these tips along your way. I want to hear from you all. I want to hear about your running, how it's going, whatever challenges you're having, anything that I've shared with you that has been helpful. I definitely want to hear about it. So let me know down in the comments. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and then we will see you next time on the Rundown with Dr. Ciarrah. Happy running!